The autonomy of a distant occupation certainly held its allure. Liberation from monotonous grind of commuting, the ability to orchestrate my own cadence within the workday, it felt like a fragment of contemporary utopia. And truthfully, without wishing to sound unduly self-satisfied, it largely was. My name is Alistair North. I operate as a data architect for a sprawling technology conglomerate. Essentially, I scrutinize nascent algorithms and extensive datasets, hunting for discrepancies or potential vulnerabilities before their full deployment. The corporation furnished me with a high-spec workstation and provided my activity logs reflected a solid 8 hours daily. They remained content. Naturally, achieving project milestones was paramount, but their schedules were generally quite amenable. Another significant advantage, especially for someone still navigating their mid-20s, was the remuneration. It afforded me the capacity to lease a charming, detached cottage, compact but comfortable, featuring 2 suites and a lovely garden area complete with a stone barbecue pit and a shaded gazebo. It was mid-afternoon, perhaps around 3 o'clock, when the chime of my mobile cut through my focus. I'd been wrestling with a particularly stubborn data anomaly, a task that often led my mind to wander. A glance at the screen revealed my father's contact flashing. "Hey there. Greeting, son. Is this a good time?" "Sure, Dad. Everything all right?" I inquired. "Well, we had a bit of an incident here." A delivery van driver seemed a bit distracted, swerved, and clipped the ancient cedar by the house. A colossal branch came down right on the roof. He paused. "You and your mother all right? Is the driver okay?" "Yeah, we're physically fine, and the driver's just shaken up, thankfully. But that branch took out a chunk of the guest wing, ceiling, and part of the conservatory wall. Your mother's pretty unnerved, gave her quite a fright," he explained. "Goodness, what can I do to assist?" I asked immediately. I was wondering if it wouldn't be too much trouble. "Could she perhaps come stay with you for a bit?" he asked, a note of hesitation in his voice. "The insurance adjusters and rebuild. It looks like it'll take at least a few weeks, a month perhaps." We conversed for a few more minutes. My father, Tristan Finch, was never one for lengthy conversations. When I suggested he come along too, he declined, citing the need to oversee the rebuild and deal with the insurance claim, plus some pressing tasks on their small holding. Before hanging up, he mentioned that Mum, Evelyn Marsh, would arrive tomorrow via an intercity coach service. A sense of anticipation bloomed in me. They lived only about 4 hours away, and knowing their early rising habits, I figured Evelyn would likely get here sometime late morning. My mother possesses a certain fastidiousness about tidiness, bordering on obsession, so I dedicated some time to ensuring the cottage was pristine. The house layout was simple. 2 suites situated at opposite ends, connected by a central corridor. An open-plan kitchen and den flowed into a comfortable living room that occupied the remaining space. I'd repurposed the second suite into my home tech hub/study, furnished with my workstation, a plush ergonomic recliner, and a small beverage cooler. Sleep occasionally eluded me, and on those nights, I'd retreat to the study, work until exhaustion claimed me, often just collapsing onto the recliner instead of heading back to the master suite. I made sure to dress the bed in the guest suite with fresh linens and placed extra throws and a memory foam pillow in the study, just in case. Trying to dive back in my analysis proved futile. My thoughts kept drifting to that old stone tower. During my early adolescence, I developed a fixation on scaling its highest reaches. It became a personal challenge, a monument I vowed to conquer. After numerous scrapes and near misses, I finally succeeded. From that point on, I'd spent countless hours nestled among its ancient stones, surveying the valleys stretching out from their property. I remained at my desk, allowing these hazy recollections to sharpen in my mind's eye, becoming as vivid as the days they were made. Inevitably, my thoughts turned to my mother. Evelyn is a woman of petite but sturdy build, closer to 60 kilograms, her dark chestnut hair often tied back, revealing warm hazel eyes. The rest of my workday passed without much incident. By the time I logged off, I was comfortably ahead of my project targets, freeing up my evening. The following day, Friday, dawned bright and clear. Perfect timing. I could wrap up my current assignment and enjoy an extended weekend with Evelyn. I rose early, set the coffee machine brewing, and then spent a good while under the hot spray of the shower. Less than 2 hours later, I applied the finishing touches to my analysis report and officially signed off. A glance at the computer's clock showed it was just past 10 a.m. Plenty of time to whip up some breakfast. Just as I was carefully arranging slices of pancakes in a hot pan, a soft rapping sounded at the front door. I hurried to open it. Standing on the doorstep was the woman I affectionately called Mom. A warm smile spread across her face, making her hazel eyes crinkle. A light dusting of cinnamon-like freckles dotted the bridge of her nose. "Hello, sweetheart," she murmured before I could utter a greeting. Simultaneously, the distinct aroma of scorching batter reached us from the kitchen. "Oh, blast. I completely forgot," I exclaimed as we stepped back from a brief hug. "Don't you worry, I'll handle the kitchen. Why don't you take my bags through to the room?" she suggested, already moving towards the kitchen with purpose. I smiled inwardly at how seamlessly she slipped into mom mode. As I hauled her surprisingly dense steamer trunk into the guest suite and hefted it onto the luggage rack, it occurred to me she might have garments needing to be uncreated. I unlatched the case. The rich scent of sizzling sausage wafted from the kitchen as I re-entered, making my stomach emit an eager rumble. I hadn't realized just how hungry I was. Hearing my approach, she glanced over her shoulder. "Pancakes became charcoal, so I'm making a proper spread. Have a seat. It'll be ready in a jiffy." I settled at the small breakfast bar, resting my chin on my hands, watching her move efficiently around the space. Just as she began transferring crisp sausage and golden scrambled eggs onto 2 plates, I mentioned my intention regarding her clothes. Without turning, she inquired, "You didn't actually delve in my luggage, did you?" "No," I fibbed slightly. "I thought you might prefer to do it yourself, but helping you hang things up wouldn't have been any trouble." "Well, thank you, dear. But really, I can't have my son rummaging through his old mother's things and personal effects," she said with a playful laugh. "You're only 44, Mom. Hardly old." I countered with a genuine compliment. Relaxing visibly, she brought the plates over. She had to lean forward slightly to place my plate before me. Later, as we were putting the clean dishes away, Evelyn commented on the height of the upper kitchen cabinets. It wasn't an issue for my taller frame. Retrieving a compact folding ladder from the utility closet, I unfolded it and positioned it neatly beside the counter near the cabinets. This was already here when I moved in. Maybe the landlords anticipated needing to accommodate someone vertically challenged, like my dear mother, I teased, a grin spreading across my face. Laughing, she accepted the gesture. I proceeded to give her a comprehensive tour, ensuring she knew about the spa functions in the main bath as well. When I showed her the study, she eyed the ergonomic recliner. "That actually looks quite comfy. Perhaps I should take that, and you can have the proper bed," she suggested. We reached the guest suite, and I observed her taking in its rather minimalist decor. A queen bed, a compact dresser, a nightstand with a lamp, and a built-in closet. Her expression wasn't exactly one of overwhelming enthusiasm. "So, what's the plan for today, Mom?" "Oh, Alistair, if you don't mind, I'd really just like to unwind here. Maybe catch up on that historical drama series, The Crimson Tapestry. It's been a rather trying couple of days." "I'm quite depleted," she admitted. "Sounds perfectly fine to me. I'm just really glad you're here," I said, giving her a quick hug before leaving her to settle in. My living room furniture was basic, a large, comfortable sectional sofa facing a coffee table and a wall-mounted flat-screen TV. My tastes leaned toward simplicity. About 20 minutes later, Evelyn emerged, announcing her intention to take a long, hot bath. That worked for me, giving me a chance to change into something more comfortable. I swapped my work clothes for worn joggers and an old band tee, then sank into the cushions of the sofa. She reappeared sometime later, wrapped loosely in a plush bath sheet, her damp dark chestnut hair glistening around her shoulders. She held a tortoiseshell comb, and as she approached, she extended it towards me. "Would you mind helping me with my hair? Like you did when you were small?" she requested softly. When I was younger, brushing her hair had been a frequent ritual. Now, before any assumptions arise, let me clarify. There were solid reasons for indulging this small request. Firstly, it brought her visible contentment, and secondly, strangely enough, it brought me a sense of calm too. She would typically sit on the rug before me while I sat on the edge of the sofa, gently working through her hair. It was a simple act of affection. Post-adolescence, however, my rationale felt a bit more nebulous. I often caught myself gazing down at the curve of her nape and shoulders as I performed this task. Taking the comb from her offered hand, I shifted to the sofa's edge and watched as she settled onto the floor between my slightly parted knees. Leaning her head back against the sofa cushions, she unwound the bath sheet from her hair, placing it beside her. Carefully working through the damp tangles, I began drawing the comb smoothly through the long strands, my gaze initially fixed over the framed print above her head. Her arms rested at her sides, but the position must have grown awkward. The remainder of the day unfolded quietly, spent flipping through the myriad options on the streaming services. Around 7 in the evening, we ordered gourmet pizza, and I retrieved a couple of artisanal lagers from my office cooler. Shortly after we finished eating, an independent sci-fi feature began playing. So, me being here, it isn't going to cause any complications with your life, is it? She asked unexpectedly. No, Mom, I chuckled. My social calendar is rather barren these days, to be honest. I know precisely what that's like, she murmured, almost too low to hear. What do you mean by that? I asked, turning slightly to meet her eyes. Oh, I didn't realize I'd spoken aloud, she replied, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. Are you and Dad all right? I pressed gently. Yes, we're perfectly fine. It's merely, she trailed off. Tell me, Mum, I encouraged. Oh, Alistair, it feels inappropriate discussing such matters with my own son, she deflected. Turning more fully toward her, I took her hand. Because I am your son, you can confide anything in me. Her eyes grew moist slightly, and I sensed her embarrassment, but also a need to unburden herself. Do you recall when your father had that cardiac episode about 5 years back? My expression must have shown concern. Well, ever since then, he's had some issues. With his connubial duties, she whispered quietly. Connubial duties? I echoed, feeling obtuse. Precisely, she confirmed, looking away. You mean, you and Dad haven't been intimate? I persisted, trying to grasp the implication. The specialist mentioned something about vascular constriction. Insufficient vigor, where it's needed, or words to that effect. For 5 years? You haven't shared that closeness for half a decade. I asked aghast. That, my dear, is hardly a subject for your ears, she replied, her tone firm but with the ghost of a smile playing on her lips. I'm sorry, Mom. I don't think I could endure such a lengthy period without. I trailed off, blushing furiously. Life, my boy, often throws unexpected curveballs, she mused vaguely. We watched the remainder of the film, finished our lagers, and caught a couple of comedy replays before Evelyn announced she was retiring for the night. I wished her good night, but remained on the sectional for a while, lost in contemplation, before eventually migrating to my study to sleep on the recliner. As I lay there, I grappled with a disquieting realization. My thoughts about my mother were veering into tender, even proprietary territory. I had never knowingly entertained such sentiments previously, but now, the boundaries felt indistinct. Just as slumber began to claim him, at the very edge of awareness, he believed he detected a faint, low vibration or whirring sound. Waking groggily the next morning, I shuffled toward the kitchen for coffee. Blinking, trying to dispel the last vestiges of sleep, I nearly tripped over the metallic stepladder I'd left out near the pantry. My lingering drowsiness evaporated instantly, replaced by a jolt of alarm when I saw my mother balanced precariously atop it. One foot rested on the uppermost rung, the other stretched awkwardly onto the countertop itself. She seemed intent on wiping down the highest, seldom used recess within the cupboard. She clutched a damp cloth in one hand, diligently scrubbing the surface. In her other hand, she gripped the neck of a substantial glass decanter of olive oil. Mom, I rasped, a wave of terror hitting me that she was about to plummet. What transpired next took mere moments, but replayed in my mind in excruciating slow motion. Startled by my voice, Evelyn spun around. The heavy glass decanter slipped from her grasp, struck the edge of the counter, and shattered. The stopper popped off, sending a viscous emerald wave cascading down my torso and splashing on her as well. Losing her already precarious footing entirely, Evelyn pitched forward, landing heavily against me. No, she gasped, her eyes wide with shock and the abruptness of it all. And then, the situation intensified. A boundary was irrevocably breached. Looking down at her afterwards, nestled against my oil-soaked shirt, an overwhelming tide of self-reproach washed over me. I am so terribly sorry, Mom, I whispered, the apology feeling utterly inadequate. She stared up at me for a few moments, her expression unreadable, before her hand shot up and connected sharply with my jaw. How could you? She choked out before scrambling away and fleeing towards a master bath. I stood there, stunned, unsure what to do or say. The sound of the shower running reached me as I began the arduous, slippery task of cleaning up the oil slick and broken shards. I glanced up cautiously when she eventually emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a fresh terry cloth, but she refused to meet my gaze. She walked directly to her suite and shut the door firmly behind her. It took nearly 3 hours to meticulously scour the kitchen floor and cleanse himself, but as soon as he finished, he started a fresh pot of herbal tea and headed for his own shower. Feeling somewhat revitalized, I returned to the kitchen, poured a mug of tea, and sank onto one of the breakfast bar stools. The soothing aroma must have enticed Evelyn out, as she appeared moments later, clad in my spare lounging robe, and poured herself a cup. He could see the redness around her eyes, evidence of recent weeping. Mom, I began. Not right now, Alistair. We can discuss it later. I need some solitude to process this. She interrupted quietly, retreating back to the guest suite. After forcing down another mug of tea, I pulled on a fleece and rugged trousers and stepped into the garden, needing to breathe and think. Perhaps affording her space was the wisest course. I hoped desperately she could comprehend it was an unfortunate accident, a dreadful convergence of circumstances. The day had turned distinctly chilly and shrouded, so the garden gazebo was empty as I sat hunched, contemplating, my mood as bleak as the sky, replaying the morning's calamity in my mind. Hours later, feeling like the most inconsiderate person on the planet, I dozed off on the garden chair. The sound of my name being repeatedly called roused me from a disorienting slumber filled with fragmented images of Evelyn and the morning's events. Blinking awake, I saw her standing in the arched doorway. Back inside, she was seated at the dining table where 2 plates of nourishment were already arranged. What hour is it? I asked, my voice thick with sleep. Close to 8 in the evening, she informs me. I'd slept the entire afternoon away and still felt utterly depleted. Mom, I need you to understand how immeasurably sorry I am. I started again as I sat down opposite her. Just consume your meal, Alistair. We'll converse later. Dinner passed in profound quiet. Neither of us spoke. Once we'd finished, I cleared the table and washed the dishes while Evelyn vanished back in her suite. I presumed she'd remain there, but about 25 minutes later, she emerged and sat down on the far end of the sprawling sectional where I'd settled to mindlessly watch a documentary. I regret striking you, she said finally, breaking the profound silence. I comprehend, Mum. I'm merited it for what occurred, I replied, keeping my eyes on the flickering screen. Oh, dear one, please look at me, she requested gently. Turning, I met her gaze. The duress of the past day was palpable. Fine lines seemed more etched around her mouth and eyes, and I noticed a few errant silver threads woven into her dark chestnut hair. Despite everything, she remained a strikingly elegant woman. What transpired? It was largely an instinctive biological response. She began haltingly. Under those specific, unexpected circumstances, it could have affected almost any man. Yes, you responded to it, son, but I realize now it wasn't entirely your failing, she whispers, her voice hushed. How do you mean? I asked, unsure how to respond, uncertain where this conversation was leading, but determined to be honest. I recall all those times you were so keen to assist me with chores, and how resolute you were in scaling that old stone spire. What can I tell you, Mum? I mumbled, feeling my face flush with heat. But I am your mother, and besides, I'm advancing in years now. You are a magnificent woman, Mum. Please believe me when I say any gentleman would find you alluring, regardless of chronology. Our gazes intertwine for a prolonged moment as we sit there. Oh, good heavens, what are we contemplating? This is so profoundly improper, she suddenly exclaims, abruptly rising from the sectional and hurrying back towards the guest suite. Dumbfounded, I just sat there reeling. I couldn't believe I'd nearly initiated something again with my own mother. Was I fundamentally defective? Some kind of aberration? Minutes spent grappling with this question yielded no reassuring answers. I decided to withdraw to my sleeping quarters, praying fervently that the following day would bring elucidation, or at least less agitation. I had been stretched out on my study recliner for perhaps a quarter of an hour when I heard the master bath shower commence. It didn't run for a very long duration. I heard her exit the bathroom, followed by the soft latch of the guest suite door closing. I lay there for another 10 minutes, battling myself, before deciding I had to go and offer a proper apology again. As I reached her suite door, hand raised a knock. I hesitated. I heard it again, that low, distinct thrumming sound emanating from within her room. Pressing my ear cautiously against the lacquered wood, I could just barely discern her soft, whispered gasps. Sunday morning arrived, overcast and drizzling. I found Evelyn already at the breakfast bar when I entered the kitchen, wearing the lounging robe again, her hands clasped tightly around a tea mug. I poured one for myself and sat opposite her. She was staring blankly in her cup, but the tension radiating from her was almost tangible. I knew I needed to break the silence, but felt utterly bereft of words. We sat like that for several minutes before she finally looked up at me. My stomach lurched at the profound melancholy in her eyes and the worry etched onto her countenance. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with trepidation. I must apologize for what occurred yesterday. If I hadn't been so imprudent on that ladder. She trailed off, unable to complete the thought. You have absolutely no cause to apologize, Mom. I interjected swiftly. But the way it culminated, I feel such deep ignominy, she continued, her voice trembling on the verge of tears. Confused, I asked gently, what do you have to be ashamed of? For the fact that I surrendered my composure, she replied, her words leaving me even more perplexed than before. I'm sorry, Mom. I don't think I grasp your meaning. I stood, refilled both our mugs, then sat back down. Trying to lighten the somber atmosphere, I asked what she felt like doing today. She gestured towards the bay window. Following her gaze, I saw rain sheeting down, drumming against the panes. So much for a pleasant ramble through the district, I commented lightly. I suggested she select their activity for the day. She proposed simply indulging in films and remaining snug indoors. Neither of us felt particularly hungry, so we carried our tea mugs into the living room and arranged ourselves on the sectional, albeit with a conspicuous distance between them. We scrolled through the on-demand channels, curating a viewing schedule for the day. Placing our now empty mugs on the coffee table, we settled back into the cushions. The inaugural feature they selected proved rather laborious. Partway through, Evelyn shifted uncomfortably. Is your back troubling you, Mom? I asked. A little stiff, yes. I believe I might have overexerted it during yesterday's descent, she replied, averting her gaze, a blush coloring her cheeks. And then, despite everything, the regrettable, the unavoidable, transpired once more. One inclination led to another, and they sought solace in each other on the sectional. Oh, Alistair, she whispered afterwards, her head resting on my chest. I'm so deeply sorry I allowed this to reoccur. It's improper, I know it is, but it's been consuming my thoughts since yesterday. Mum, all I desire is for you to find contentment. I told her truthfully, gently stroking her hair. You achieve that, dear heart. Almost excruciatingly content, she murmured with a wry, teary-eyed smile. Grant me a few moments, then come to the master's suite, she instructed softly before slipping away. My curiosity, perhaps imprudently, gained the upper hand. After less than 5 minutes, I followed her. Pushing the partially ajar suite door wider, I peered inside. Then, I entered and lay down beside her. Later, after they eventually roused themselves and shared a prolonged, hushed shower, they went to find something substantial to consume. They were both ravenous. Early the following morning, my father telephoned to inquire. I only caught Evelyn's half of the conversation as I lingered near the kitchen threshold. Everything is perfectly well here, Tristan, darling. But your son isn't the most meticulous of domestic stewards, you know. I believe I might need to make a journey down here perhaps once or twice a month, just to assist in maintaining the dwelling in proper condition, she told him, a playful smile gracing her lips as she caught my eye. Focusing on my tasks over the subsequent 2 weeks proved incredibly demanding, but somehow I met my deliverables. Needless to say, I didn't spend any more nights reclining in the study. The day Evelyn was scheduled to depart arrived too swiftly. I carried her baggage out to the waiting coach. When I return next month, I might have a small revelation for you, she murmured with a playful glint in her eye, before ascending into the vehicle. It pulled away, leaving me standing on the curb, pondering exactly what kind of revelation she could possibly have in mind.